Good afternoon, and thank you for sticking with us for this hour of BNC Live. I'm Brittany Jones. I hope you are enjoying your Labor Day, folks. I'm in for Tashani Whitlow. We begin this hour with the latest on the coronavirus pandemic. The United States is averaging more than 150,000 new COVID-19 cases a day. And given the elevated rates of community transmission in nearly every region of the country, that number could rise once the Labor Day holiday wraps up. Millions of Americans hit the road this holiday weekend, and millions more travel by air. The latest numbers from the TSA shows more than 5.3 million travelers passed through security checkpoints between Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Then there's the return of college football. Thousands of fans also packed into stadiums this weekend. No social distancing, hardly any masks, cheering on their teams. So here with me now to talk about this is Dr. Jeffrey Mount Varner. He's an emergency room physician and decisions expert. Good afternoon, Dr. Mount Varner, and welcome to BNC.
Brittany, how are you? And thank you for having me.
Yes, I'm doing good. So, Doc, what goes through your mind when you see those large crowds? You're talking about football games or wherever people are having these big parties, you name it.
What goes through my mind is that we are about to experience a large increase. If we walk back since this COVID crisis has started, after every single holiday, we have experienced a sudden surge. Now combine it with things that you just mentioned, which are now we have college football filled with large people, filled with large amounts of people, many of them not wearing masks. And so we're about to experience a large increase in about 14 to 17 days.
Wow. I mean, and when you hear those numbers, I know we already kind of brace ourselves for it, but at this point in looking at the number of deaths, it's definitely difficult to hear. So some would argue that those football fans were outdoors, so science would suggest that the risk of getting infected with the virus is low. Are they right about that?
Well, that is an interesting point. This time last year, they were more right. But don't forget, we are in the midst of a Delta variant surge. And what we've learned about Delta is that it is more infectious, which means it's easier for someone to contract, combined with the fact that it multiplies faster. All that means is that the closer you are in contact with anyone, especially unmasked, puts you at greater risk than, say, when you're in close contact with someone with the original strain. What we know for sure is that while they're outside, being outside comes with risk.
Yeah, and I mean, I just imagine still yelling and spitting and all that type of stuff going as you're cheering for your team as well. So what about this? Are hospitals preparing for a post-holiday surge? You just mentioned a moment ago that they could be. Do they even have the capacity to prepare given the current surge when many are at capacity already?
Brittany, that is an excellent question. I think the answer is it depends. If you are in a part of the country that's not experiencing a surge now, then the answer is yes, they are preparing for a surge. But if you're in that part of the country where you're already experiencing a surge, there may not be capacity in the system, which means that care at the end of the day is going to be compromised. Here's why. You have the COVID, you've got the COVID surge, but people need to keep in mind that the same diseases that existed prior to COVID still exist, meaning heart attacks, strokes, surgical emergencies, trauma. So you have an overwhelmed system still dealing with the old disease processes and now this surge. So some parts of the country, they are about to be compromised as it relates to emergency care health.
And Doc, when do you start seeing that wave after like a holiday weekend? How soon after do you see that surge come about?
Well, great question. Being a practicing ER doctor, who this will probably be my 6th or 7th surge, it usually starts to happen about the 10th to 14th day. Science says about the 7th, but about the 10th to 14th day, within the ER, we will start to see an increase in the number of patients. We'll start to see an increase in the number of hospitalizations, and that leads to an increase in the number of ICU admissions, and unfortunately, an increased number of deaths.
Yeah, that is definitely unfortunate. So at least 1,000 K through 12 schools across 35 states have been reportedly closed for in-person learning because of COVID-19 since the beginning of the school year. As more schools prepare to reopen, could we start to see more closures?
I've got to say that we will absolutely unequivocally see more closures. The science is very clear. The model has shown that schools that do not have a mask requirement or a twice a week testing policy, about 75% of those students at least will contract the COVID variant within the first 3 months. 75% of the entire school. Hence, I think we are about to see a large increase of school closures.
Wow, it just makes me so concerned for my little nieces and nephews and everybody's babies out there. So Dr. Varner, Mount Varner, what should the U.S. start doing now to possibly prevent more closures?
Well, at the end of the day, that is a great question. It's to do what we've already been talking about. Wearing your mask, wearing your mask, wearing your mask. And if your child has symptoms, don't send them to school. I know it seems easy. I have children too, but this is not like the old days. Your child had a slight cold and you couldn't take off work, and so you sent them in anyways. Now, if you do that, this could have deadly consequences for another family. In other words, wear your mask. If your child's not feeling well, leave your child at home. And lifestyle means everything. I mean, healthy living, eating right, plenty of sleep, making sure that you maximize your immune system.
And are we at the point where many have suggested that we must learn to live with COVID just as we had to learn to live with other viruses like the flu and anything else?
Brittany, that is an excellent question. If you listen to the tenor and tone of many of the experts now, if you read inside of the lines of what they're saying, it sounds like we are reaching a point where herd immunity will not be reached. And what that means is, it means that vaccinated as well as unvaccinated are very likely to contract this virus. Now, the studies are also very, very clear. If you are vaccinated and you contract the virus, you have minimum risk. If you're unvaccinated and you contract this virus, your risks go up astronomically, not just against death, but against strokes, clots. So again, we are back to this to the regular point. Being vaccinated in this unique and one-time space we are in is extremely important.
Well, Dr. Mount Vernon, we've got lots more to talk to you about after this short break, so stay with us. We have more stuff coming up. He will be talking about the latest on the newly emerged Mu variant. Nearly 200 cases have been recorded so far in Los Angeles County. We'll tell you what you need to know about it and how concerned should we be. BNC Live returns in just a moment. The United States is getting closer to 650,000 COVID-19 related deaths. That's according to Johns Hopkins University. This comes as some hotspots, including some in the Southeast, are seeing record numbers of patients in the hospital with the coronavirus. John Lawrence reports.
While millions of Americans are celebrating this Labor Day weekend, there are concerns increased travel and large gatherings could spark another COVID-19 surge. And hospitals in some states are already overwhelmed with patients.
We are setting case records. We have a record number of Kentuckians in the hospital battling COVID, in the ICU battling for their lives.
More than 99,000 people in the U.S. are hospitalized with COVID-19, according to data from the Department of Health and Human Services.
Some of it has to do with the fact that there's been tremendous disinformation campaigns and people are believing things that are simply not true.
Health officials are keeping close watch on another variant called Mu.
Right now, it is not an immediate threat.
Federal regulators are considering the possibility of authorizing a booster shot within the next few weeks. Dr. Anthony Fauci told CBS that the White House would probably roll out at least part of its booster plan the week of September 20th, but the vaccine plan will have to get approval from the FDA and sign off from the CDC first.
The good news about our vaccines, if you get the level of antibody high enough, which boosters actually do, then you can feel pretty confident that you're going to be protected against virtually any variant.
And Dr. Jeffrey Mount Varner is back with us to continue to talk about the latest on the pandemic. He's an emergency room physician and decisions expert. Doc, thank you for sticking around with us. So let's talk about the Mu variant. LA County has recorded more than 160 cases. Dr. Fauci says it's not an immediate threat, but what should we know about this variant?
What we should know about this variant, and thank you very much for that question. It first appeared in Colombia back in January, We've seen it appear in about 39 different countries. We have about 167 cases in LA and about 2,000 cases in this country so far. We know it's more contagious, but we don't know whether or not it is more deadly. What we do know is that it's a variant of interest. What that means is there are several variants out there, but this one has shown us enough where we are watching it to see if it's going to become the dominant strain. There's some data out there to lead us to I think it may not be as effective against the vaccine as we once thought. But there's a lot more information to find out.
Does it seem like it matches up to the Delta variant so far?
Well, that is a great question. If you just look at the data coming out of Colombia, it does not appear to be spreading as fast. But don't forget, the Delta variant was identified in October of last year, and it took about a year for it to reach where we are now. So I would say it's still a little early to figure out where Mu is going to really take us.
Yeah, it's actually scary to hear that too. So are you concerned about the rate of how the virus is mutating, especially since some health experts say it's vaccine resistant, like you just said?
Well, the rate is, well, viruses do what viruses do. Viruses mutate.
Right.
What's concerning about this one is that as it mutates, it is creating a vaccine escape, meaning that that our vaccines don't appear to be working as well. However, given that we've now figured out that a booster shot, a third shot, or maybe a second shot, if you've taken Johnson & Johnson, will give us a lot of protection against these various strains. And while we don't know about Mu, but we definitely know that it gives us greater protection against the Delta strain.
Mm-hmm. And Doc, what does the COVID-19 fight look like in the fall and winter? I know this was a big concern last year, and here we are still in the pandemic again this year.
Well, you all know me, and your audience knows me. I've been on your show several times, and I am forever the optimist. I just want to say that this is going to be a very difficult winter. It's going to be a very difficult winter compared to last year. Why? Kids are in school. You have these sporting activities going on, and then you have the Delta variant, which is more contagious, and you still have 43% of Americans who are not vaccinated. And by the way, the bulk, some studies are showing that only up to 35% of Black Americans are vaccinated. So if you're not vaccinated, this is going to be a very scary and difficult fall and winter season. If you're vaccinated, while it's going to be concerning, it won't be as scary as those who are unvaccinated. In other words, people just need to prepare for a different fall and a different winter than what we have experienced many years ago.
Yeah, and Doc, I've just looked on my timeline all across social media. You just see rest in peace, rest in peace. Some people saying get the vaccine because they keep having to post rest in peace. And so the Biden administration says Pfizer is on track with the booster shot rollout for the week of September 20th, but it appears Moderna may be lagging. Is it a significant concern that the rollout may not happen simultaneously?
It's not a significant concern as long as Moderna happens soon. But I think that just as long as those people who are eligible for the booster for the Pfizer, they get it when it's time, and we're going to be hopeful that the Moderna third dose will come soon. Otherwise, I think you're going to see our federal government experts come up with some different alternatives. But it looks like Moderna will be ready soon thereafter.
And how much does an uneven rollout create for the opportunity for mixed messaging? We know some people have already said there are reasons why they don't want to get vaccinated because they keep hearing different things.
Yeah, I think that that's a very good question.
Yeah.
It creates a chasm for the mixed messages. But I've done enough shows, I've spoken to enough people, I've taken care of enough patients to know that those folks who are hesitant now, it probably has less to do with missed messages, more so with them needing to just pursue and look into accurate and reliable information. Because keep in mind, we have over 50 million people who have been vaccinated. So there's enough data that if someone really wants to get vaccinated, they can look forward and say, hey, it's safe, and this is the safest alternative to making sure that I protect me and my family and my kids. And the reason why I say that, most kids at this stage who contract the virus, they contract it from an adult, and it's often the adult that they live with. So getting vaccinated helps your whole family.
But when the people in the Black community hear this and they talk about the mixed messaging, does it have an impact on them to decide not to get it? What do you think about that?
I think, in fairness to them, it does. And here's why. Historically, the medicine has maybe not have not messaged things well to the Black community. We have a lot that we've got to prove to the Black community. So the mixed messages definitely presents a conflict. But the Biden administration really wants to put their efforts on Red Bull, send messengers that look like them out to their community. Do what you all do. Put people who look like the community and who are part of the community to go out and talk and share the right message. And I think that would give us the biggest bang for the buck.
That's very important. And so, Doc, the Biden administration announced Friday a $65.3 billion plan to prepare for future pandemics. What are lessons from this current pandemic that helps us plan for any future ones that we can't see right now, but we know one day is coming?
Lessons. You just mentioned one. One of them is messaging. And most importantly, it's if you reach out early on to the least of these, meaning those who are most vulnerable, if you take care of them, then all boats float in a rising tide. And so what we can do is work on messaging, work on leadership, and make sure that we poignantly target those vulnerable populations, and we already know who they are. And to your point, there will be another crisis coming. There will be another infectious crisis. So hopefully we will take these lessons, learn from them, and implement them so that we can protect us all.
From your lips to God's ears, let's get these prayers in for the future. Dr. Mount Vernon, thank you so much for your time today.
And thank you.
And when we come back, the latest in the congressional investigation into the January 6th insurrection. You'll hear why a Republican leader in the House of Representatives is sending threats to private American companies. Stay with us. You're watching BNC Live. Top leaders of the January 6th Commission say House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy is making baseless claims about former President Trump's involvement surrounding the January 6th insurrection. And this Labor Day weekend, they called out McCarthy. Our D.C. correspondent, Botha Yaman, is here with more about what McCarthy said and the fallout. Many thanks to both. The Taliban has claimed victory in Afghanistan's Panjshir province following 2 weeks of fierce fighting with a resistance group, making it the last remaining area to resist the Taliban. The group seized control of most of Afghanistan 3 weeks ago, taking power in Kabul on August 15th. General Motors is looking to halt production at nearly all of its assembly plants in the U.S. starting today because of a chip shortage. It has led to limited inventories of new vehicles at GM and across the industry, which in turn has pushed car prices to record highs. The company says its assembly plants in both Arlington, Texas and Flint, Michigan will remain open. Well, no one in the world is stopping Anita Baker these days after announcing that she has won the fight in reclaiming her masters. The Quiet Storm Queen made the announcement by posting this tweet, letting fans know that they can now go stream her music after getting the masters of her original recordings of all of her songs. Baker had previously asked fans to not stream her music until she took ownership of her catalog. BNC Live returns in just a moment. Welcome back to BNC Live. Well, dealing with the ongoing pandemic and other life stressors can take a toll on many, making it even more difficult to navigate day to day. So September is National Suicide Prevention Month. Many people want to know that they are not alone and they have resources in their communities to help them. Jen Sullivan takes a look at the mental health toll COVID-19 is having on young people.
Already, their bodies are battling nerves, hormones, and where they fit in their communities. Add a global pandemic and everything gets magnified, creating a huge impact on their mental health. According to a study published in JAMA Pediatrics, twice as many kids and teens experienced symptoms of anxiety and depression during the COVID-19 pandemic than those that had pre-pandemic. Globally, 1 in 4 were depressed, while 1 in 5 were dealing with elevated levels of anxiety. And it's no wonder. Schools closed and remote learning became the norm. Opportunities to meet up with peers or supportive adults outside the home dwindled. Extracurricular activities and hobbies all but stopped. Not to mention the constantly changing conditions and disruption to routine. According to child clinical psychologist Jenna Glover, that chronic stress can lead to feeling hopeless, and that can lead to thoughts of suicide. But there is a way to turn things around and help kids and teens cope in a healthier way. Talk to your kids. Keep as regular routine as you can. Have them in school, if it's safe. Monitor their sleeping and eating habits and their mood. And remember to seek help from a mental health professional if necessary.
All those are very important things. Our mental health and wellness expert, Jane Marks, is with me now to talk about National Suicide Prevention Awareness. Jane, good afternoon. And Jane, obviously you and I talk about this all the time. People are dealing with so much, a lot of weight on their shoulders right now. So during the height of the pandemic, studies show that globally 1 in 4 people were depressed and 20% are dealing with high levels of anxiety. What are some steps people can actually take to cope during this difficult time?
Well, when you're experiencing extreme anxiety, the first thing you might need to be mindful of course, is paying attention to your body and how you're doing. Are you sleeping well? Are you eating well? Are you taking time to exercise? Those are keys in managing anxiety. But if it's more than that, you probably need to make sure that at least you have what I would call a go-to person that you can talk to about what you're experiencing. Because sometimes you can't really trust your own judgment. So it's important that you can have somebody in your life who at least knows where you are now, knows where you've been. So if there's a significant change, this helps with anxiety management. So to have a supportive person or a supportive group around you are just some of the few steps that you can take.
And sometimes people can't identify what folks are going through. They're looking at them, but they can't really see through what they're going through. What are some of the warning signs of suicide so people can know if somebody is having a tough time and it could be leading to that?
Well, you pay attention to what's, what you're seeing. I think a lot of times, suppose a person has had a significant loss in their life, then you know that they're at risk. Or alternatively, suppose you know that they've had suicide in the family. And then you couple that with, let's say, economic disparity, or they've lost their job and all those things. And then all of a sudden you start to see things like them giving their things away, or having messages or saying things like, life is not worth living, or, we've even seen, totally different changes in their personality, mood swings. You see all sorts of signs, or them saying, you know what? I've been considering buying a gun. Now this is, that's unusual talk. Or you see an increase in substances. All of these things are big indicators that suicide may be on the horizon.
Yeah, and I actually took this very personally, Jane, because I had 2 friends that actually committed suicide, and sometimes for some people it's a quick decision and they don't even, you don't see it coming. And studies have shown, suicide rather was an ongoing crisis for Black and brown communities long before the pandemic. Are minority communities getting more access to mental health services?
They are at this point, and the reason is this, is that community leaders and faith and spiritual leaders are taking action. And one of the things I have found, particularly in a lot of communities here in the South, is that they're putting mental health units directly into the classrooms and directly into schools, so that kids have resources, and they're putting language on it. And that's what's going to make a difference. Now in terms of having insurance and access, that's historically been a difficulty for communities of color. And believe it or not, the biggest group of people who are at risk are Native Americans. We're seeing just huge numbers as far as suicidal ideation and suicidal completion.
And so we have been in a global pandemic, everybody has felt it for a year and a half now. How can social isolation and economic stress have an impact on people's mental health? And just kind of being by yourself.
Right. It has a huge impact on anxiety and stress, because first of all, if economically you don't have a job, your focus is, how am I going to pay the utility bill? You're not strategizing about your mental health. all you're concerned is, am I going to be able to feed my family? Am I going to be able to make sure that everybody's taken care of? Will we have the lights on? Those are the kinds of concerns. So you can't problem solve. You can't strategically know what's going on with you. So, and then you couple that with isolation. There's no one saying to you, you're going to be okay, things are going to get better. You don't have the kinds of supports that you need. So it's a big one. And so for the month of September, it's critical that we pay attention to suicide and its impact on communities in general.
Certainly. And the pandemic has caused constant changes to our routines. Kids and teens can experience a lot of stress and anxiety. How can parents actually help their children and teens cope in a healthier way?
Well, they have to be there. Certainly, that's what's important. And you have to spend quality time with your teens. And I think, sometimes during these, particularly the anxiety is high, you might want to say, listen, it's time for a tech break, and most importantly, you got to get physical. Teens, by and large, need to have that physical activity. And they also need that sense of belonging and engagement. So to the extent that parents can look for these things, that's a critical, healthy thing that they can do at this point. Because a lot of times parents don't know what to do. They want to say, I'm going to fix it for you, or here's a solution, or we're going to get you some medication, or we're going to get you to a therapist. Well, I can't tell you. I've been working with teens for over 50 years. Yeah. First of all, I ask the question, who made the referral? Was this your idea or was it your parents? I can tell you routinely they'll say it was their parents. And so I have to get them to shift so that they become engaged in the process. So for teens, I think first of all, for parents, it's recognition that there's been such a change in your child's functioning that you need to do something.
Yeah. I mean, I know sometimes it's definitely hard to get them to open up, but more importantly, Jane, how can our viewers learn about mental health organizations in their local areas?
Generally most communities have local mental health facilities, and if you can't get to it that way, then call your local city commission or your county commission, because they know where the resources are. And sometimes, you don't think of those as being resources, but they're there. Or call the local hospitals. Most hospitals can give you that information immediately.
Yeah. Well, we all know it is so important to keep our mental health in check. Jane Marks, our mental health and wellness expert. Jane, thank you. And stay with us. Much more BNC Live after this short break.